Welcome to Recovery Inspired Hope. And today I'm so excited to bring this interview to you from our friend Jesse Harless. Now, all of my friends in Georgia Council know Jesse. We've all gotten to experience his amazing trainings and teachings and classes that he's held for our continuing education and for our different events. But something that you might not know about Jesse that we were just talking about, number one, Jesse is in recovery as well. Now, I did not know this until I started reading his new book. So Jesse has, is it backwards in my camera?
No, it's perfect.
So this is Jesse's new book, and he is going to tell us all about it, where his passion came from to write it. And also, something super amazing that we were just talking about is that Jesse is bringing you this interview from the great state of New Hampshire, which is where I am from. Shout out Manchester Memorial High School, all of my friends, class of 98 out there. And so
Manch
we're going to
Vegas,
get
right? Don't they call it Manch Vegas? Yeah.
Yes, Manch Vegas. Yes, yes. Which is where I had most of my really amazing, super fun times in my life pre recovery, of course. So I'm excited, Jesse, for everybody to kind of get to know a little bit about you, who you are, your journey, your recovery journey, and this amazing new book that you just put out.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jamie. It's really an honor to be here, and I'm excited that you asked me to come on your show. I'm, who am I? I'm someone who just was on a journey of discovery and came across trauma in my life, and it took me on a path of addiction, and mental health conditions. So, you know, the beautiful part about it all is that it taught me that there's a way to get well. And because of that, I've done a lot of work on myself to be able to then help others at all ages and of all races and of all walks of life to just share certain principles that I've learned, because we all have our own unique traumas and experiences and our original wounds that we have. And so some of my original wounds kind of shaped some of the, not kind of, shaped the future with how I would numb out pain. And I found coping mechanisms to numbing out pain, starting with fantasy. I say my first drug is fantasy. My first drug was fantasy, which means my first drug was getting outside myself with online games on the computer and internet pornography. Those are my first ways to escape my pain of my father leaving at 4 and then my best friend leaving at 11, and these feelings that they don't go away. Unfortunately, they don't go away on their own. And they play out throughout our adult lives unless we take a look at them. And when people hear that, they might say, well, I'm not an addict, so that's not true. Well, what's an addict?
Mhm.
Is an addict someone who drinks and does drugs, or is an addict someone who also is not wanting to feel their feelings? Or is it someone who is addicted to unhappiness? So what does that mean, the word addict, right? There's, in some ways, I believe that we're all addicts at some level. So
Mhm.
So I'm really just here to share my story and what it was like for me. And I think and because of that, I've heard so many thousands of stories from others, and it's been such a great gift to hear the strengths and all these stories. And I say today, if you're breathing and you're here right now, you're a miracle, especially if you've been through your life up until this point. So I'm really grateful to be able to be on here and sharing anything I can for your listeners.
Thank you so much. So let's start with this, Jesse. How long have you been in recovery?
Well, I want to say this about recovery. Recovery can mean different. For different people.
Mhm.
Look at Demi Lovato and what she's talking about, what her recovery is like. Is that wrong or is that right? Who knows? With what she's saying recently. And, to me, my recovery is from drugs and alcohol. And I also have recovery from mental health conditions. And so my recovery involves addiction recovery and mental health. So, um, So it's been 15 years since I have found it necessary to drink alcohol or pick up opioids or any other substance like cocaine and things that I did. It's been 15 years. And I'm so grateful. I found recovery from these things at 22 years old, and it wasn't out of choice. It was out of necessity because of I was facing serious charges for my addiction to opioids. So, yeah, so it's been 15 years.
So you got into some trouble, and that
Yes.
was what made you decide to do something different?
Yeah, I got into some trouble. It it was some pretty serious trouble. I just found a way. So to back up a little bit, so at 22 I found recovery, but at 21, 20, and 19, but really at 20 is when I really started to get into heavier drugs, and it was really like not the safest thing to go. That maybe that's not talked about a lot, right? Because we don't want to talk too much about our backstory, but maybe that's important because it can be life and
Mhm.
death for some people going into the streets, and so now it's in all neighborhoods, fentanyl and drugs and all these heavy things that are happening in this world. And, that's dangerous though. So going to the streets to get what I needed, or even going to not the streets, when I see streets, it could be suburbia, it does not like just any streets,
Right.
but going there, it was with my personality and how I was, I'm like this empath. I'm like this, you could call it introversion, but to me, that I feel like that's limiting myself. So I'm more of an empath, and so I didn't want to like have to go and get it every time. So I found a way to order it myself through the internet, meaning opioids through the internet. And I got caught. That's the short version. And it was
Oh,
very
wow.
serious. Yeah, I got caught by um, some federal agents. So I ended up facing serious time, and that's where you know that's where the judge it was like, okay, this is your prescription for recovery. It was kind of told to me what my recovery was going to look like, and it wasn't rehab. Ironically enough, they didn't send me to rehab. It was go to meetings. And when I say meetings, I mean like 12-step meetings, and
Mhm.
get your paper signed and meet this drug and alcohol counselor and work full time. That was literally my prescription. It was to live with my mom, was to work full time, was to go to the meetings, and was to meet with this drug and alcohol counselor. That was the prescription. There was no drug courts at the time. They didn't send me to rehab. So very interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, how did you feel about that? Were you just like like terrified? Like I have no idea how to do this?
Yes, that is the exact word I would use. Terrified is the exact word. Because I also had panic disorder. So,
Mhm.
it's one thing if I was just kind of like withdrawing from drugs, but I had panic disorder. So I would actually be at my job and a customer would come in and talk to me, and all of a sudden I would have a panic attack during the talk conversation, and the person would
Wow.
just stare at me, and I would be having this episode, and I'd have to leave and go into the bathroom and get on my knees, and I would just pray because I didn't know what was wrong with me. And this happened for many, many years. And that's why a lot of people relapse. It's because of this underlying causes and conditions we never get to recognize because of the deep stigma of mental health and addiction.
Right.
And so luckily I had a drug and alcohol counselor at the time that I was seeing. So I got to share stuff like this about these panic attacks. I also journaled every day. So I would like journal these experiences. It was extremely terrifying because I was facing 7 years of federal prison. I was supposed to go to jail for sure, or federal prison for what I was caught with. And so between the stress of withdrawing from drugs, from the stress of panic disorder, from the stress of this impending court date, yes, it was terrifying. That's how I would describe it.
So, cuz you had like panic disorder, right? And then on top of that, you're withdrawing, like detoxing from opiates. I mean, which gives you anxiety in itself,
That's
right?
right.
So you used the opiates to kind of calm down the panic disorder?
Yeah, I mean, I, discovered that it, like many people, it was a way to self medicate and really help to um, take away the anxiety, to take away the depression, to take away the wounds, the pain.
Mhm.
And yeah, and it was a whole lifestyle in itself. So yeah, I mean, that was the solution. My solution was that. And my solutions today are very different, but my solutions at the time was opioids, alcohol, and other things. So
Mhm.
yeah, so that was my solution at the time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can really relate to that. And I loved how you talked in the beginning about fantasy. So, my parents moved a lot. I went to 12 different schools by the time I started high school, which was in New Hampshire. I was in New Hampshire when I started high school. And I would kind of like make things up every new place that I went to, like, oh, this is a new adventure and I'm here doing this and I'm going to be this person now, to try to like cope, you know what I mean? And using that fantasy of like living in like a almost make believe, but it was how I dealt with trauma and how I coped with, growing up and living with an abusive alcoholic father and in a chaotic family where there was all this abuse and stuff. So I love how you talked about that fantasy, because that is something that that's what what I read in your book, and that is something that I think needs to be touched on more. So I thank you for being able to like dig inside yourself to see that that is was kind of like one of the things where it started.
Yeah, it took a long time to recognize that too, by the way. This is not an overnight matter. This took many years. It took a decade for me to understand the deep levels of trauma that I had experienced, that was playing out. And that had definitely played out in my teenage years and in my early 20s and when I had the severe addiction. But even into recovery, that it was playing into my recovery, this stuff that I wasn't taking a hard look at, the stuff that was the wounded self, the trauma, and then also how fantasy played a role, because fantasy can play a role in the recovery. And
Mhm.
so it's so like, my first drug was fantasy. And then I had this nightmare before Christmas that happened, which was I was arrested on December 22nd, 2005, and arraigned in federal court for those charges. So like that was that nightmare before Christmas. And then the most beautiful part is I found recovery. And sometimes some people don't get recovery the first time. They might get
Right.
arrested and face serious time, and they may even do time in prison, and they might not get it the first time. For me, I it was such a wake up call. I can't even describe it. It was the most profound experience I can ever describe to you, because the prosecutors and the team that was trying to put me away literally was telling my mom, a single mom. My mom was, she raised me with three boys on her own, and they were telling her, your son's going to go away for 7 years in federal prison. It wasn't like, hey, we're going to work this out, we're going to set him into a rehab. It was like, he's going to go down for this. And so it was just so stressful. And but yes, I picked up many, many, many coping mechanisms and habits that were positive that first year, because out of necessity, and they served as the foundation that still serve me today. We can't stay. I heard this saying once. We can't stay clean on yesterday's shower. So
Right.
I have to, you know, do the work each day. But those early foundations of habits that I have established are things that I had shared in my new book and things I still do today. And I have a lot of new things, but it's amazing how simple practices can carry throughout your whole life. And I still do some of those things that served me 15 years ago.
So you said that your prescription was to go to meetings and meet with the drug and alcohol counselor. So were meetings like your kind of your first pathway?
Well, actually, the first pathway was meeting this drug and alcohol counselor. I didn't find meetings till like I was a month and a half, 2 months
Mhm.
in sober. So the first thing I did was to meet weekly with who became an incredible mentor and friend, Bonnie Halsey, rest in peace. And she was this like an angel. Like I met her and she changed my world. She actually, because of her impact and how she held space and how she held and the space of psychological safety for me and how profound it was to be able to share with a safe person, I ended up later on becoming a counselor myself for a little while because she had that
Wow.
deep of an impact on me. So yeah, so the prescription was meet Bonnie and work full time. And then eventually it was, hey, when I met my pretrial probation officer, she said, here's these papers, go get them signed. And then I started going to these meetings. And then so the foundation started to be this, see Bonnie. I also had a mentor too that I had before I found the meetings. I had this mentor. They thought I was going to be suicidal, so my mom made sure that I had this male role model or mentor that I would meet on a weekly basis. And so I met with him. So I was really talking to him and Bonnie and dealing with the court, and then eventually I got how to get the paper signed. And so I started to realize there was like a fellowship, and then there was people that would talk about recovery at these meetings. And so that was the early foundation. But I also journaled every day. I started journaling right away, right even before I
Mhm.
started doing all these things. That mentor told me to buy a journal and start journaling your journey every day and write down some gratitude or write down some things that happened. So I've been journaling since 2005 every day. So it's a really powerful practice, and it really helped me to write my book in a lot of ways because I had a lot of ideas. I could live with integrity, right? I could just read my journals and be like, oh,
Right.
cool, this really happened, and this is what I can put into my book. And so yeah, so that's kind of was the foundation with the thing.
Journaling is so cool because you can actually like go back and like see how you've grown. I was looking, actually I had to speak last night somewhere, and so I was going through my journal. I went out in the morning and took my journal and took my Bible and was just kind of like reading and trying to get prepared to speak for the evening. And I was going through my journal and finding like things that like happened in my early sobriety where like, I just kind of started getting like the blessings of recovery, like starting my business and things. And I had gotten like a gig working with the football coaches on UGA, and I was like writing in my journal, like, I can't believe this really happened to me. Like, this is the best thing. I can't imagine anything better than getting this job. You know what I mean? And now, recovery unfolds so many blessings in so many different facets. But just like seeing, that I thought that my life was at, this point was the best it was ever going to get. And I was so happy. And now, like, all the things that get added to you in the recovery journey is just so amazing. Like, you just never could believe, right? That you would be an author today of an amazing book. And um, so how can you tell us a little bit about how you ended up with Georgia Council teaching? Because we all want to know that.
Well, that's a secret. So no, I'm just kidding. So okay, so it's really and this is for all people, not just people in recovery, right? Like there's amazing synchronicities that happen in our lives. And when we take the time to tune into them, we start to see them very clearly. And I started recognizing these synchronicities that were happening in my life, which are things that are not coincidence. They're meaningful coincidences. They're above like the statistical probabilities of coincidence that is happening in my life. And so looking at I ended up doing a training to become a facilitator in 2017 when I left my job at Verizon to become an entrepreneur in recovery. That's the name of my business, Entrepreneurs in Recovery. And when I left my job, I did this training, and it showed me how to really become this facilitator of conversations that are backed with psychological safety and how to establish that very quickly. And I found that would be extremely powerful to bring to sober living residences, to bring to drug courts, to bring to mental health centers and treatment centers. And I started doing that right in 2017, 2018. I started going to the sober living residences, treatment centers, drug courts, and I would run groups with the clients. And I would run these groups using this facilitation method, using my experiences with personal growth and development and with my background in mental health and trauma-informed care. And I would start to bring these workshops for 60 and 90 minutes, and people were actually having profound experiences during the workshop, and then it would actually follow through with habits later on when I would check or come back. And it was really, really powerful. So I said, there's something to this. And so and if you're wondering, look, what is this facilitation? What's behind it? Well, there's many things. And one of the things it's appreciative inquiry, positive. So appreciative inquiry. So there's a hint for where we're going. Appreciative inquiry, positive psychology, design thinking, systems thinking. There's all this deep research behind this facilitation method. But at the highest level, it's called exchange. But it's at the highest level, it's appreciative inquiry. So I'm doing all this work. And this person named Neil Campbell, the CEO of the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse, takes this training with a person named Sherry Torres. And Sherry Torres is a friend of mine who wrote the book Conversations Worth Having, which is about appreciative inquiry. So
Mhm.
Neil was taking this training, and Sherry says to Neil, "Oh, you're in the space of addiction recovery. Do you know Jesse?" And she said, "No." She emails me in the summer of 2019, and I respond to Neil and I say, "Neil, let's get on the phone." And we get on the phone, and it was like talking to my sister. It was like talking to my long lost sister. I was like, "Oh my," we had so many things in common. And one of the things we had in common was appreciative inquiry. And I said, "Neil, I've been doing this for several years in the recovery space, bringing this to groups of all sizes all over." And she was like, "Well, let's get you to Georgia and let's have you work with about a small group to see what you can do. And then we'll go from there." So that was how it started. And then in October of 2019, flew out to Atlanta, and I met Brian Kite, and I met so many amazing people from the council. And I ended up, of course, Jay Hughes. And so I ended up running a training for 9 people for 6 hours. And after that, they sat me down, the council, and said, "Hey, we have this event coming up in December, and it's for all the RCOs throughout Georgia. We're not sure what to do. What do you recommend?" And I sat there for 45 minutes describing how I would run this event. And they said, can you just facilitate the event? Are you available?" And I was like, "Let me check my schedule." And of course I was available. So that's how it started. And then we did the event in December with 110 people. I think there was about 30 RCOs there. And it was 3 hours. And then the council said, "Would you like to work with," and this is before COVID, and this was in December of 2019. They said, "Would you like to work with the council throughout 2020 and come and fly out here 10 to 12 times and do all this work?" And I said, "Yes, let's do it." And they was part of the B Corps grant, so the Building Communities of
Mhm.
Recovery grant from SAMHSA. They had given me that, and we started working, and then COVID hit, and so we just brought it all online. So I'll leave it there. That's where it started. That's the story.
Yes, so I've gotten to take one of your in-person trainings, and I've done your online, because this is how it goes, Jesse. It's like, "Oh, okay, we need to take a continuing education. Okay, what do we got? Oh, Jesse's teaching. Yes, we're signing up."
I'm glad you
That's
feel that way.
that's how it goes.
Love that. Love it. That's great.
So tell us about your book. How did you decide to come up with this idea? Like, you must have wanted to write this book for a long time.
Yeah, you're right. So the idea for the book came over 10 years ago. When you go to these groups and you're asked to speak and you do it over and over and over and over and over, you start to hear different parts of your past and story, and people start to ask you, "Man, like your story with the whole getting arrested and all this stuff and the way you tell it," they're like, "Do you ever think of writing a book?" So people started to plant the seed, and I was like, "Man, I want to write a book someday." And that was 10 years ago. And so what ended up happening is in 2018, I ended up getting serious about this idea of writing my story. Now, to back it up, I wrote a book before this book. So there's a book that came out before the book now, and that book is about cold showers, smash your comfort zone with cold showers. So that was my first book, and that book came about because of 2015. I started taking cold showers every day to relieve anxiety, and it worked. And I talked to the guy who has this study, is a peer-reviewed study of how cold showers can reduce depression and anxiety. So I reached out to this guy, and after talking to this molecular biologist about cold showers reducing depression and all this, I'm like, I gotta write this. I gotta write a book about this. So that was the first book. But to talk about this book was my whole story. I always wanted to tell the whole story. I wanted to talk about trauma in the way I describe it, because we all have trauma, and some people have such severe trauma, and I had my own version of my severity of trauma. There's no comparison who has the worst trauma, but it's just
Mhm.
I wanted to share that to show people that they might have missed that as part of of what's going on with them even presently. So I just wanted to tell the story, but more importantly, I didn't want to just write a memoir. There's already amazing memoirs in the addiction recovery space. I wanted to write a toolkit. I wanted a toolbox. I wanted someone to read my book and go, "Oh my God, I can become this person that I've always wanted to be, reach the highest version of myself." So the book is a memoir, and then the second half of the book is a recovery toolkit. So I'll leave it there. And we can go from there. But that's what it was. The seed was planted 10 years ago. actually, let me tell you one other part of this. Why the book actually got written. So in 2018, I took a course to write about what type of book do I want to write, and if I was to pitch it to a publisher, what would this book be about? And so I had this framework of this book and include this fears recovery toolkit, which is in the book. And I didn't end up getting the publisher to do it. So here's what happened. I met this guy, another author, Dr. Danny Friedland, and he had published a book, and he said, hey, you should talk to my friend Amanda. And this person, Amanda, runs a company that helps authors. And what I said to her is, I don't have the money to afford all your services. I just want you to keep me accountable. So in 2020, I took 10 months and I wrote that book. I had someone keeping me accountable. Every 2 weeks, I would check in and I would write. And in 2020, I finished the book, and it came out about a month. It came out on February 22nd of this year, or February 21st of this year. So that's kind of the story of the second book, and the shortest version I can give you.
So 10 months. I love how you said that, because I've been going through this you know through this period of time, right, where everything in my life has been very busy for for a very long time, and very routine. Being a massage therapist, I run my own business, YouTube, doing family stuff, right? And I'm reading another book called The Best Yes, and it talked about scheduling yourself time to do the things that feed your soul. And clearly writing this book as something that, has like been feeding your soul, right? So like I think it's awesome that you took this 10 months, that you had someone hold you accountable to actually do it. Like, and that you like committed and dedicated yourself like to this goal, to not just, to do like something else, like to grow, to become the highest version of yourself, like you were saying. Um, because sometimes we can get stuck in that same old routine, and doing the same things when we have dreams and aspirations to want to do other things, right? But we get like so bogged down with like our busy life and the same routine. What kind of advice could you give to somebody who wants to take their life to the next level, wants to do some entrepreneurial things to feed their soul, like write a book, or develop a class, or something like that? What kind of advice would you give to somebody like that?
Yeah, I mean, I meet a lot of motivated individuals, especially in the addiction recovery and mental health space. I meet them every day. It's incredible the amount of potential and people in this space that are just ready to roll. They're like, I want to become a life coach. I want to write a book. I want to start a business. And I'm just like, okay, well, where can we start? And I think focus is the key. Like, where do we focus? What is the priority? And in my book, my first part of my recovery toolkit is focus. Focus on your recovery. Focus on your purpose. Focus on your vision and mission. So that's really where it begins. And when I say focus, I'm saying write it down. Physically write it down. Buy a to-do planner. In the background on the couch, you can actually see there's a black book, and that's actually my planner. And I've been doing this every day. And some people might say, well, I'm not routine oriented. I don't like to write down all this. Okay, but if you want to get focused on your life, you need to write it down or have some method to record it. So focusing on your purpose, or focusing on some type of intention and goal you have, like to write a book, you got to write it down to say, okay, today, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write for 7 minutes. Keep it simple. You got to be honest with yourself too. A lot of people say, oh, I want to write a book. I want to go to the gym. I want to do this. And it's like, okay, slow down. We need to break it down to mini habits. What are the mini habits that we can do? Let's start with 7 minutes of writing. But hold on, let's even back up before that. Before you even start to write the book, let's mind map or heart map the book. Let's just take time to mind map this book or this business, this idea that you have, before we get started, so we can get clear on where we're going. So that focusing is really key to start. And then from there, we won't get discouraged because we have some sort of plan that we can follow. And so that's where I would start, is like focus on the plan. And if you're not even sober right now, or you're struggling with addiction, you're really addicted and you're like, I need help, well then focus on your recovery. That's your first task. Focus on your
Mhm.
recovery. What is the recovery priorities that you need to start with? And everyone's recovery looks different. It's not all the same. So that's where I would start with, is focus.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Focus and get Jesse's book with the toolkit and work it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse, for sharing your story and sharing all that amazing wisdom. It's always so awesome to get to hear you speak and get to hear your encouragement and things. Um, so I will put the link in this video on my YouTube and on Facebook and Instagram where I put it out, and I will put the link of where we can get this book off Amazon, right?
That's right. Hmm.
That's where I got mine, off Amazon, and I already put it up, and so many of our friends have been like, "Oh my goodness, I got to get this
Thank you
book." So
so
you've
much.
got
Thank you.
lots of support, and we're so excited, and thank you for everything that you do for the recovery community. So you guys
Thank you,
make sure
Jamie.
you get Jesse's book. Make sure that you share this video with some friends who may need to hear this message, and make sure that you guys are really, like Jesse said, trying to go to that next level in your focus, and making that, I love how you said that, your heart map, like that, just that really spoke to me, having a vision for what we want to do, because we, as people in recovery, we hustled hard for our for our drugs, right? And we hustle hard like that in life too, and we need to focus on the specific things that are going to bring us to that place that we're supposed to be at, right? So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to Jamie Tull on YouTube, and we will see you next time on Recovery Inspired Hope.